Thanks so much for taking the time to watch the Father Effect movie premiere on our YouTube channel. Please share with others so that God can bring hope and healing to families everywhere. And let us know what you think by leaving a comment. I greatly appreciate you, and I pray God moves in you, encourages you, and inspires you as you watch the movie. Thanks again. The Perfect Father Ministries, Inc. is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. For more information about the Father Effect movie and book, and to give a tax-deductible gift to help us get more movies and books into prisons, please visit us at thefathereffect.com.
When I grow up,
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 I want to be just like my dad. I want to be just like my dad.
I want to be just like my dad.
I want to marry a man just like my dad.
I want to be just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be angry, absent,
A drug addict,
an alcoholic,
Physically and verbally abusive.
a workaholic,
controlling,
selfish, unfaithful to my wife.
just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to abandon my son, just like my dad.
When I grow up,
I want to abandon my daughter, just like my dad.
when I grow up, I want to be
Just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be
Just like my dad.
just like my dad.
Just like my
Just
dad.
like my dad.
Just like my dad.
My name is John Finch, and this is my story. This isn't just my story, but it is the story of millions in the past and in the present. Our goal in making this film is to help change the story for those living today and for the generations of those yet to come. If someone would have told me a few years ago that I would be the dad and husband I am today, I would have said that's impossible and my life would never change. It's amazing how God steps into our lives, makes the impossible possible, and changes us in ways we can never imagine.
It's so cloudy.
I was never prepared to be a father. I had no idea how hard it would be, or how heavy the responsibility would feel. You know, it doesn't seem right to have that much influence over one small life. The way they look up to you, and how easy it is to let them down. Maybe if my dad had been there, it would have been easier. But he wasn't. I grew up most of my life without a father. I can remember his face, but I can't remember a life with him. The last time I saw him, it was on a school day. He was always gone in the mornings, but for some reason he was able to drop me off that day. He even gave me a kiss. I will never forget that day. It was so cloudy. I was in 5th grade, and that day I remember we were watching a movie, so it was kind of a special day. I was sitting on top of my desk, and the vice principal walks up the stairs, comes over to me and says that I needed to go to the principal's office. And I remember thinking it was pretty unusual because I was a good kid and had never been to the principal's office. So I walk into the principal's office, and there was our pastor, and he didn't say much other than, "John, we need to go to your home." And so there was this half a mile stretch between the school and my home, which seemed to be 100 miles long. And as soon as I pulled up to the apartment, I saw my mom out on the balcony, very distraught. I could tell even from that distance she had been crying, and it was then that I knew something was terribly wrong. I just remember several times just stopping and looking up, and it just being so gloomy and just so overcast, and realizing, that my life would never be the same without my dad. I have replayed that day in my mind a million times. If I would have been a better son, if my dad would have known how much he really meant to me, if I had told someone about the gun I found just a few weeks before that day, maybe my life would have been different. After my dad died, I was lost, bitter, confused, and fearful. I felt inadequate and lacked confidence that I could ever measure up to the expectations of others. Because of my dad's decision to take his own life, I struggled with guilt that it was something I had done, shame because I thought most people were whispering, "There's the boy whose dad killed himself," and I struggled with anger and rejection because my dad chose to leave me. Just a few years ago, my mom was telling me about a conversation we had right after my dad died. She said that she told me I could ask her anything about my father, and she would tell me the truth. She said I responded, "I don't want to know anything about my dad." Seeing friends with their dads really made me feel like I was missing out on something that I should have had. I felt abandoned and deeply betrayed. For many years after my dad died, I had a dream that I saw my dad out somewhere at a grocery store or a gas station, and that he wasn't dead. I think it was just that longing deep down that all this stuff that had happened with my father wasn't true, that he had not really died, that he had not killed himself, that he hadn't committed suicide and left me and my mom and brothers to live on our own. My mom was the most amazing and loving mom anyone could ever ask for. But as much as she wanted and tried to be a father, she could not. She simply didn't know how and didn't have the tools to be a dad.
No boy ever knows he's a man until a father tells him. A woman can't tell you. She can tell you, but it won't make sense to you. And until a father looks you in the eye and says, "I declare you're a man," you will always be trying to find that affirmation. And so until a father says, "You're my son in whom I'm well pleased," you'll always be on a futile search for your identity.
Fatherless generation, moms trying their best, feeling guilty that they're not doing enough for their son, so they have to whitewash it and pretend, well, I'm covering the bases for my son, I'm being a father for my son. No. This is called addictive denial. When a society believes that a mother can do the job of an absent father, or a father in any case, that's addiction. And if we don't face up to the truth and say, no woman can bring a boy into manhood, no matter how kind, religious, Christian, gentle, cheerful, brave, clean, and reverent, no woman can bring a boy into manhood. Until we face that, we're not going to face our wound.
One of the greatest things that we can tell single moms especially, or moms where the dad's kind of checked out, physically present, but in every other way absent, is you don't have to be dad. You can't be dad, okay? You get to be mom, right? That little boy or that little girl needs the father influence, and that can come from uncles and coaches and teachers and pastors and mentors and youth leaders. You can find the kind of male influence that you need, but to put that pressure on mom, right, is a crushing load. It's enough to be mom. Like, mom is a full-time job. Mom is all she's got. And if she feels like she's got to be both mom and dad, I mean, it just becomes brittle. It's exhausting. It can't be done, right? And so the first big kind of relief is you don't have to. You don't have to be mom and dad.
As I entered high school, I became more bitter and angry, understanding just how much I needed my dad's advice about school, girls, sports, and many other things. As a result, I started drinking to escape, a habit that would prove to be an issue for most of my adult life. I was suffering from a hurt so deeply rooted in me that I needed something to help me cover up the pain and fill the void. In college, I was the life of the party, and it got me the attention I'd been craving for so many years. Attention from others that I thought would somehow finally affirm me as a man. Because I did not have a dad walking alongside me, giving me guidance and direction, I was desperately looking for any and all signs that told me I had what it takes to be a man.
Every little boy growing up has two essential needs from his dad. He needs to know that his dad adores him. He needs to know, I love you. That's core. That comes first. That's the base for everything else. That's the foundation that everything else in the boy's life is built on. I love you. I am the apple of my dad's eye. He needs to know that. And he needs to know from his father, son, you have what it takes. See, that's the question every little boy has. Do I have what it takes? Will I be a man? Right? Can I come through? And so through the story of his life, through the tender years, the teenage years, on into young manhood, every man craves this. These two things, love and validation, okay? Delight from the father and affirmation. The power of a father to bestow identity is extraordinary. It is, the father-son relationship is the most powerful relationship on the earth, because in the story that we live in, the father-son relationship is the most powerful relationship in the universe, because there is a father and there is a son, okay? So this is where the wounding comes in. If that little boy does not get from his father, you are my delight. If he gets something much worse than that, he may get silence, he may get abandonment, he might get violence. If he does not hear from his father, you have what it takes. That's where the father wound comes in. Okay, in those two places, in love and validation, delight and affirmation, if the boy gets wounded there from his father, it will define him for the rest of his life until he deals with it.
As a young salesman in my 20s traveling the country, I had bought into all that the world tells you should be as a real man. Make lots of money, drive a really nice car, have a fancy job title, a big house, and I could drink a lot of beer. As a result, I spent the next 20 years trying to create a false persona of the man who I wanted people to think that I was. I believed the lies that society tells you. I couldn't admit that I had an issue or a struggle because it would make me look weak or somehow less of a man.
A lot of men hold their cards close to their chest, so to speak. They don't want you to see their weaknesses. They don't want to, because they've been bullied maybe, or they know that men take advantage of their weaknesses in business and courtship or whatever. Well, there's something about the testosterone in men that makes them very competitive like that. But their fear is that if I let you see my weakness, you'll use it against me.
Well, men struggle at being good fathers because they don't know what a good father is supposed to be. They haven't been taught. You can only give what you have,
And so most of us as men, not having been taught properly, just do what we kind of think is right. It seems kind of right, but not sure if it's right, but well, heck with it. I don't have time to do anything else, let's do this.
As a father, I was scared I would end up just like my dad, always struggling financially to make ends meet and not living past the age of 42. As much as I did not want to be like my dad, I was. I was selfish, always focused on making money and being successful, and a salesman who spent a lot of time away from home. I was a fraud, and I was living a lie. At home with neighbors and friends, I pretended to be a great husband and father. And I felt as long as I took my wife and kids to church, I was doing a pretty good job as a dad. Because I grew up in church, I knew how to play the game and just what to say, convincing people that I was a good Christian who read his Bible every day.
I am not the man that they think I am. That's the first thought that comes into these men. I am not who they think I am. But I'm afraid for them to find out. So because I'm afraid for them to find out the real person, I'm going to control my relationships, and I'm never going to really be vulnerable and transparent. So we learn to live with this goofy church mask on, pretending that everything is okay, when we know it's not. But we can't imagine us really telling the truth, because then we would be exposed, so we start posing. I think that's the culture that most of us find ourselves in the local church. The safest place to fail should be the local church. The safest place to be truthful should be the local church. When in fact, it's the most dangerous place to fail in most cases, and it's the most dangerous place to tell the truth, because the penalty for telling the truth in most churches is you get ostracized. You get labels put on you. So you're 50 years old and you're struggling with porn? What the heck? What are you doing? What's happening? You can't kick this? So instead of me being transparent with someone and asking for help, I just go deeper, I push it deeper, I push it deeper, and I put on more and more complex church mask.
You got to understand the dynamic of posing in order to understand the dynamic of men and the fellowship of men and men's friendships, whether it's the bar scene or it's the men's retreat at church, okay? Same dynamic, right? Guys primarily are faking it, okay? Scared to death to be known, because what do they think is going to happen? Exactly what happened before with Dad, right? Criticism, ridicule, violence, rejection, abandonment. We are just terrified that if you really see me, you're going to laugh, you're going to leave, right? You're going to be appalled. And so guys are like, I'm going to fake it, So if you're a funny guy, you kind of play the funny guy, or if you're the serious spiritual guy, you just kind of play the serious spiritual guy, and you don't get anything like real brotherhood. You don't get anything like genuine fellowship while all this posing is going on.
Someone once said, if you want to learn faith, do something you can't do. Most of us men, if we're honest at all about ourselves, we know what we don't have. That's why we try so hard to prove we've got it, because we don't have it. And when it comes to fathering, our hard drive is deficient.
The journey towards an authentic masculinity and the journey towards authentic brotherhood involves both a willingness to quit faking it, right? To just go, look, I'm done with the poser. I'm sick of that guy, right? It's the false self. It's the mask I put onto the world, and I'm just sick of it. I'm done with that life. I don't want to be that guy anymore. Setting that stuff down, and also beginning to experience some genuine healing of the inner brokenness, right? That opens up this phenomenal world of friendship and connection and band of brothers that guys crave and is available, and it's available in Christianity like it's available nowhere else.
Most men don't know that in God's eyes, they are loved just like they are, and that God already knows our weaknesses. We can't hide them from Him. He already knows about them. But that when we surrender to Him and openly open up our weaknesses before Him and other men, that the Holy Spirit comes in and really does a marvelous work in bonding our hearts together with one another.
At age 41, I was providing a great life for my family financially, which is what I believed was my only responsibility as a dad.
money becomes an idol, becomes a symbol of success. It's not a measure of success. So that's something men can do with or without God. They can make money. And in our society, if you make money, it proves to some that you are successful, significant, all that kind of stuff. The problem with, as every rich man will tell you, you never get enough, and it never satisfies that need for significance.
I spent thousands of dollars at restaurants I never dreamed I would be going to as a kid who grew up in government-assisted housing. I had created a pretty chaotic life for myself, but in my mind, I had finally reached the pinnacle of success. Most of my life, I lived with the feeling that I had to prove to a world that didn't even know it needed proof, and to my dad, who had been dead for many years, that I could make it on my own. Misguided, inadequate, and unprepared as a man, husband, and father, I struggled at all the things that should have mattered most, but they didn't.
But the things that are important to them as dads in parenting aren't important to their kids. Because when I ask kids to tell me about their dads, they never tell me what their dads do for a job. They never tell me, what kind of a house they live in. They tell me if their dad yells at them or not. They tell me if their dad laughs. They tell me if their dad's fun to be with. They tell me stories about things they did with their dads. They tell me about living life next to their dads. That's the big stuff to our kids. And once dads get tuned into that, then they're going to really be unafraid of in their parenting. And that's my hope and prayer for every dad out there and for our country, really.
My world was falling apart, and I was struggling to keep it all together. I was having all kinds of problems. I was a social alcoholic, spending hours drunk in bars in different cities 2 and 3 nights a week. My relationship with my wife and kids was suffering deeply because I was gone all the time. And even when I was home, I wasn't really there. I was having health issues, and I was afraid of losing my job. It was the darkest day of my life. I was scared and convinced I was all alone, and that I was the only one who had issues. There was a conversation I had had with a friend of mine just a few years earlier that I had thought about often and always remembered. We were playing golf, and I was sharing with him some of the struggles and trials I was going through at the time. At one point, he turned to me and said, "You grew up without a father, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I went on to give him this great 10-minute explanation about how incredible my mom is. As soon as I finished, he turned to me and said, "But was she a dad?" It was at that point that I really began to understand the significant and lifelong impact of growing up without my father. My friend went on to explain the idea of a father wound. He said that many people are wounded by their dads because of their dad's words or actions.
Knowing that your dad is there for you and that he will never leave you and never forsake you, right, establishes a confidence, again, in a boy's heart that he's able to move into a man's world. If that gets wounded, he is going to fear rejection and abandonment for the rest of his life. And so, in very severe cases, you get, emotional attachment disorders, right? And they can't commit to a relationship, and they can't experience love, and like deep withdrawal, deep hiding. In less severe, you'll just get guys who are fairly checked out, don't want to commit to a relationship, don't really want to invest in friendships with men. And you go, why do men isolate? What's with the isolation thing? Most guys don't have friends, right? And when they do get in social settings, it stays pretty surface level. Well, they're afraid of exposure. They're afraid of rejection. Everyone's going to do to me what dad did to me, is the deep fear, right? So if it's criticism, then he's hypersensitive to criticism, right? And he can't take just a simple instruction from his boss. Hey, Hal, you kind of blew it on that project. Can you get that fixed for me? And he feels all this criticism. Well, that's the father wound, right? If it was abandonment, then he's going to fear abandonment, right? Or if it's betrayal, like as in many divorce scenarios, the wound is a betrayal wound in the man. He's going to fear betrayal in friendships. He's going to fear betrayal from his wife, right? And so he's going to insulate himself emotionally.
A lack of words, a lack of affirmation can be a curse. When Dad's not there, what he's actually saying to you, that you hear loud and clear, even if he never says it, is, "You're not worth it to me to be here. You're not worth it to me to be here."
Because my dad chose to abandon me, I was very bitter, angry, and resentful, and it was impacting every aspect of my life. I knew I needed to change, but I did not want to face this monster in the mirror that I had created. I didn't want to deal with all the guilt, shame, unworthiness, and fear because of all the things I had done and the mistakes I had made as a husband and a father. I drove away from the golf course that day feeling an incredible sense of relief that I wasn't weird or abnormal because of all the things I had been struggling with. It was as if I had been walking around for years with a nameless, unidentified disease no doctor could cure. This idea of a father wound made sense to me.
You recognize you got a wound, and you go to a doctor. Now for a man, it might mean to go to a counselor, Christian counselor. It would certainly mean at some point talking to another man, at least one of the men, better, a platoon of men.
I had a friend who recommended a counselor named Dr. Tom, and he guided me into a past I knew I could not go through by myself. After years of being angry, I struggled to talk about my dad and the pain of what he had done.
And oftentimes the emotion, and this was true with you, is just below the surface. But all I have to do is ask one or two questions, and here are the tears, and here's the pain.
We talked about my dad and the memories I had of my life with and without him. I had no idea my behavior was a direct result of my dad and my feelings of abandonment, and the angry 11-year-old boy that still lived within me and who did not want to know anything about his dad soon became a man with a never-ending desire to know and hear more stories about him. I started to think about a lot of the things with my dad, and just wanting to know, the curiosity of wanting to know what kind of man he was, what kind of boy he was, to know about his life. I think every person has this longing to know what their father was like when he was little, and what did he like to do for hobbies, and what kind of man was he? What did his friends think about him? I had an incredible curiosity to know what molded and shaped my dad into the man that he was. My dad grew up in Millington, Tennessee. His dad died from pneumonia when he was 9, and he was raised mostly by his grandmother. His mom worked during the day as a telephone operator and spent most nights going out. She married a total of 5 times, giving my dad little stability and a father figure. As a boy, he lived right down the street from my mom's family and became best friends with her younger brother. As a young teenager, his mom married her 5th husband, who moved the family to Louisiana. My dad then faced head-on the reality that his mom cared more about men than him. Abandoning him at the age of 16 in New Orleans to live on his own, his mom left with her new husband, who drove an 18-wheeler. Determined to make it on his own, he lived by himself over a bowling alley where he worked at night. He would get up early every morning before school to hunt for scrap metal that he would sell in order to have lunch money that day. After high school, with the support and encouragement of his coach, he received a football scholarship to Arkansas A&M, which was just a few hours' drive from his hometown in Millington. When visiting his childhood friend one weekend, he found out my mom was still single. Wasting no time, he asked her out and they began dating. Every spare day between his busy school and football schedule was spent hitchhiking back and forth to see her in Millington. Not wanting to continue the long-distance relationship, they married and they were soon raising 3 boys. With the entrepreneurial spirit he learned on the streets as a young man and his desire to be successful, he opened a tire store. By all accounts, he was a brilliant businessman and salesman, eventually turning the one store into 4. Gone most of the time, he was doing the best he knew how to provide for his family. Somewhere along the way, he befriended a couple of guys who talked him into making some quick, easy money. Unfortunately, my dad never seemed to quite get away from the fast money lifestyle, frequently getting into financial troubles and writing bad checks to bail his way out. He began running a counterfeiting operation and was eventually arrested as he stepped off a plane one day returning from a trip. He decided to turn state's witness and as a result, spent less than a year in prison. When he was released, the FBI approached him with the news that out of 4 men on a hit list, he was the only one still alive. My family was put into witness protection and flown to Fort Knox, where we lived for 10 months under an alias. We moved to Texas to start a new life when they cleared us to leave. On April 10th, 1979, my dad's lawyer told him he was headed back to prison following his court date scheduled for that afternoon. My dad told my mom many times he would never go back to prison. He never made it to court that day. For 30 years, I had thought I was the only one who struggled with this issue and that I was all alone. As I began to share my story and hear the stories of many others, I soon realized that there are millions of people who suffer from a father wound, and it was an epidemic that was much bigger than I ever imagined.
Growing up without my father, like I said, my grandma raised us. And when that happened to my father, him killing himself, my mom went crazy in and out of prison, so my grandma took care of us because she didn't want CPS to take us. We would go to this park called Ripley House. And when me and my brothers would go to this park, we'll walk to the park, we're like 13, 14. We would see these dudes hanging around smoking weed. So when we would go that way, they would stop us, hey, come over here. So we would stop and we started smoking weed. I looked up to these dudes because my father wasn't around. So we would go over there every day and get high, start to lead to pills, crack, coke. I guess that's why I grew up like this. I think if my dad was around, I don't think I'll be here today. Actually, to tell you the truth.
When there's not that male influence there around you to show you, and there's this void and there's this hunger for that male attention. And I definitely needed that and wanted that in my life.
I wish my dad, in a broad stroke, would have showed me how to be a man, what it meant to just be a respectable man, how to respect myself, how to deal with women, how to treat women. I wish he would have taught me not to curse, not to use profanity. I was real good at it by the time I was in 4th grade. I wish he would have taught me self-control. All the things that I know now that I so want to teach my kids, I wish my dad would have taught me.
It's related to the abandonment. It was related to the sense that I took on as damaged goods. Okay, if my dad isn't here caring for me, there's something inherently wrong with me. So I took that with me into the beginning of addiction. I can honestly tell you, I don't remember a time early on that I was doing it for party's sake. The instant that it hit my system, I was like, I'm home. I don't feel nothing but good. And all those voices and all that inadequacy, all the shame, all the invisibility, all those things were gone. They were gone. So it became my quest, in a sense, to make sure I stayed in a state of numbness, however that figured into the equation, so I could continue to feel like those things that hurt so bad were pushed down so far that I could have some semblance of freedom.
I learned
that there's no right way to do a wrong thing. I think that my father's intentions were usually probably pretty good, but the way he went about them were always bad. And no matter how hard he tried to do something good the wrong way, it always failed. I wish that my father could have loved his children more than his love of gambling. Because no matter how much he maybe did love us or said he loved us, obviously his addiction to gambling meant more to him. And I would imagine there's other people that could relate to that addictive behavior, be it alcohol, drugs, gambling, or whatever addictive behavior there is in their family, that it just was the most important thing in his life, was getting another dollar to make another bet.
I mean, there are a lot of things that I knew very surface level, that now that he's not here and I'm older, I wish he'd have told me back then so I could actually relate to him. Because now I'm here and I have no idea. I mean, I can't get that back, because he's a pretty amazing man. But it's sad I didn't know that about him until he was gone.
You know, I was promiscuous at an early age, drank at an early age, always searching for affirmation, needing affirmation, not understanding that, you know, you aren't good enough, because when your father, especially I would say a father, abandons you, you feel unloved. I just don't understand how you can know that you have a child in this world that you have nothing to do with.
One day as I was sitting in Dr. Tom's office, God revealed a question to me. How could I be so angry, bitter, and resentful towards a man who didn't know how to be a father? I knew my dad had grown up without a father, but I didn't truly understand it until that day.
That's the last step in healing, is to recognize that your dad didn't give you what you needed because he never got it. He never had it to give. So you got to forgive your dad. You got to pray, Jesus, show me my dad the way you see him. You got to have a box of Kleenex on hand. I always say, a little boy cries from his father's wounds. Dad hurt you, you cry. A real man cries for his father's wounds.
As I began to hear more stories about his life and the way he grew up, I found forgiveness for my dad.
I remember getting a call from the VA hospital. I was friends with one of the nurses there, and I said, just, let me know what's going on at all times. And she called me and she said, you better get down here. I don't think you're gonna have another chance to say goodbye to your dad. So I immediately hustled down, and I get to the hospital bed and my dad is completely passed out. And I grabbed his hand. I knew I needed to say it then, and I couldn't even repeat the words that I said. I just know that it was full of love and forgiveness and wishing him the best. And when I turned around, the nurse had walked into the room while I was talking to my dad, and she was just full of tears. And she said, I just didn't want to interrupt you to tell you that he passed away an hour earlier. And I said, you know what? I didn't do that for him. I did that for me. And I did. It was important for me to truly forgive him in my heart. It's the best thing I've ever done.
I would want to say it face to face and hug him and say, man, I love you. No matter what, I love you. And I don't blame you. You don't owe me anything. Maybe that more so than I love you, because I tell him I love you. Maybe just letting him know you don't owe me anything. I've healed. God has delivered me. He's my father who never disappoints me, so I don't want him to walk with any guilt and shame. And I think he might still be walking with some guilt and shame.
I think the thing that I would tell him, though, is that I forgive him.
I forgive you. And I'm sorry that I didn't. I'm sorry I didn't when you were here.
I walked out of Dr. Tom's office a new man to a new world with a new perspective. And I began to live a life with my wife and kids I never thought was possible. Because of the forgiveness I found from my dad, my whole life began to change. And the more I talked with others, the more God was teaching me about how I could be a better dad. I was inspired by Neil Jeffrey as he told me stories about his hero.
My dad was truly, as most boys see in the dad, he was my hero. God planted what Isaiah kind of talks about in the book of Isaiah, a giant oak tree of righteousness right smack dab in the middle of my house. That was my dad. He always prayed for us. And he'd in fact, hundreds of ball games, my dad, before the game, hey son, let's have a pregame prayer. We'd huddle up. After the game, win or lose. And sometimes, I remember I had some tough losses. Dad would say, hey, we're going to have a Thanksgiving prayer. And just thank the Lord. And we'd huddle up and we'd pray. He'd write me a letter. My dad was a little writer. He always referred to me as honorable number one son, because I was his first son. Dear honorable number one son. This is handwritten now. Just wanted you to know I mentioned your name to the Father this morning. Love, Daddy-O. He loved us, and in the tough times of life, he just he spoke truth into us. And he just, by his life, we just saw, this is how a man does life. How does a man love a woman? Well, every boy needs to know that. I know how it ought to be done because I had a man who did it. And I watched him do it. I watched him love my mom. And I realized, you know what? I want to be like my dad, who did life well. His marriage was good. Wasn't perfect, but it was a good, strong marriage, and he loved my mom, honored my mom until the day he died, raised us kids. And you know what? I realized that's who I want to be, is how I want to live my life. And it makes me realize every day, I want to live my life in such a way as a dad that when my son passes my life, I pray he sees something in me he wants to be just like his dad. Well, my girls have been raised in such a way by me, and seen me treat their mom in such a way that those girls feel like, you know what, I'm not going to settle for any man unless he's like my dad and treats me the way I've seen my dad treat my mom.
I wish my dad would have been home more often so that we could have had more talks, more father-daughter time.
I wish he told me that he loved me. I wish he would have
showed me how to love my wife and how to raise my children.
I wish he would have told me
that I didn't have to face life on my own.
I wish he would have
understood. I wish he would have told me.
He was proud of everything I have done.
I wish he would have
been there.
I wish he would have spent more time with us as a family. Instead of him being passionately in pursuit of his desire to be successful.
I wish my dad would have told me
if I didn't accomplish something or another, that he was proud that I tried, that I got out there and tried.
I wish he told me
how to be a father.
I wish he would have fought harder for my mom.
I wish he would have
said, I love you and you're important.
And I just wish he could have gotten it.
I wish my dad, in a broad stroke, would have showed me
that I was somebody and showed me how to fend for myself, without me having to go do it on my own.
I wish my dad would have taught me what to look for in a husband.
I wish he
thought about what he was doing, thought about the other people that were going to be hurting more than how he was hurting when he did what he did. Thinking about how it was going to affect my life and my mom's life and how much it might possibly hurt us.
I always wish that he would have shown me
transparency and just, sensitivity.
I wish I had that father that
would ask his daughter, what do you need from me? What can I do for you?
I wish he would have taught me that I was important.
I wish he would
love my mom differently.
I wish he would have told me that you don't have all the answers all the time.
I wish he would have
just showed up. Just been a
a part of my life.
I wish that he cared, you know, showed me love.
I wish he taught me
how to appreciate other people, how to manage money.
I wish he told me
that I was important, that I was special or precious, or that I mattered.
I wish he would have not dwelled on his sin and just understood that God forgives and moved forward.
I wish my dad would have told me
I have what it takes.
I wish that when, you know, the man came to pick me up for a date at 16 years old, or the boy I should say, that my father was at the door with a shotgun going, "You better not mess with my daughter, you know, or I'm gonna mess with you." You know, I wish I had that. You know, I had nobody there protecting me.
Because of the disconnect, the distance between me and my dad emotionally, spiritually, I didn't really have that with God. I didn't even know it was possible. So whenever the word Father was spoken, my mind would go right to my father. So I could not separate the two. So the first time a pastor or a preacher or anyone suggests to say, "I love you, Father," was weird. Couldn't say it. I literally could not get the words out of my mouth. I had to force the words out. And after I said it, I had to think about what I just said. But it did not make sense to me. I couldn't make the connection that I could actually say and mean that I love you, Father, because of the bitterness that I had towards the person who played the role of the father in my life.
I just found God to be somewhere out there, somewhere. No one that was personal, no one that was there really. And you know, that's kind of how I viewed my dad for a long time, you know, because he wasn't near to me. He was living in another city. God was there. It's just that he was far away, like my dad was.
He just continued to show love, and that was the thing. It was really this, that I'm for you. Whenever I heard the gospel presented of, hey, there is a God that wants to have a relationship with you. It just, yeah, you know, just like my earthly father. That's what I saw, is that no matter what we had done, I just knew his love wasn't going to stop.
I was following my dad, and I ended up following who he was following, which was Jesus.
As a father with 3 girls, I sat amazed as I listened to Dr. Meg Meeker talk about a dad's impact on his daughters.
Girls bond through talking and through listening. And so how dads speak is very important to daughters because we become intimate with people by talking. Your daughters need you. They need your person. They need your touch. They need your time. They need your feelings. They need to hear you talk about anything. What are your opinions about things? What do you think about the president? What do you think about God? They need to see who you are as a person. And the only way you can do that is through spending time with them. If a daughter knows that she has her dad's love, life makes sense. If she doesn't know she has dad's love, life doesn't make sense. And there really is a dad hole in every daughter's heart. And if a daughter doesn't have that hole filled with her dad, she will look anywhere to get it filled. And one of the most common things that I see is adolescent girls turning to boys for attention, for love, for affection, even just to be touched. Girls will do anything just to be touched and to feel loved by a boy. And they'll have sex with any boy. Even though they may not like it, they will do it because for that moment, they feel that a man loves them. Dads have no clue about the power that they have in their kids' lives. That's what dads need to understand, is that you may feel like a loser. You may feel like you're not earning enough money. You may not feel strong enough, smart enough, athletic enough. Your kids aren't thinking about that, particularly your daughters. They could care less. To them, you're enormous in their eyes. It's very interesting. We're finding now that even girls who are the product, if you will, of sperm donors, who were raised by a single mom, literally didn't have a dad, are going now and trying to find who that man was who donated sperm. You see, there's that tie, that bind that is so strong that they will seek out a stranger to identify him as dad. That's why I call it a primal need. It's a primal drive that all girls have. That's how much it throws them off if they don't have dad.
I've been married 4 times.
I think you don't trust them. And so it goes back to you trying to do everything you think you should do to keep them, not being yourself even, becoming someone else to keep them so you don't lose that love.
I kind of went towards a father figure. I was looking for a dad that would pay attention to me.
I was looking so hard for security, for somebody to love me and not leave me.
They're going to leave me. I'm not worthy to be with a man. They don't care about me enough to stay around.
I used sex to get love.
I chose someone just like my dad.
The reason girls tend to marry somebody with very similar characteristics as their father is because they get so used to relating to a man they love in a certain way, and they don't know another way to do it, and it's subconscious, and so they just fold themselves back into that type of relationship because it's familiar. It's so deeply rooted in them. And that's why, many girls who have been abused as youngsters by their dad end up marrying abusers because that's all they know.
You get a little girl that's broken, doesn't know she's loved, doesn't know that, she's beautiful and that she will be chosen. She will give herself, right, in order to try and get that father love, try and get that assurance that she didn't get growing up. You get a dad who's blessing his daughter, right? She's going to know what kind of man to look for. She's going to know what to hold out for in a man. She's not going to settle for some broken poser, right? She's going to wait for a good man who's going to love her well.
Recognizing and coming to terms with my own father wound also made me think about how I had wounded my own children. I knew I couldn't do anything about the past, but I could do something about the present and the future.
I believe a man's main role, one, is to love his God with all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength, and discover who God wants him to be. Secondly, is to love his wife, the mother of his kids.
I think it's important for dads to teach their kids about God. The reason it's important for dad to teach their kids about God is because you are your kids' first reflection to male love. And you sort of put a template over their hearts for how they're going to relate to all male figures, including God. You are the conduit to God, the first male conduit to God.
Love God, love your wife, love your family, and then apply yourself to providing for them and enjoy the fruit of that. Allow them to see there's nothing more important than that in life.
Here's what you need to know. The power of your love in their life is immeasurable. You are the most powerful figure in the world in their lives. Offer your love freely. Offer it openly. Offer it often. Because here's the great promise. Love covers a multitude of sins. It's not that we're going to get this thing perfect, okay? I've wounded my sons. I've blown it. I think I've been a great dad, but I've also messed up, okay? They know I love them. They know that in the core of their being. And when a boy or a girl knows that, it can cover over some of the other mistakes we make. Tell them you love them often.
Do what you say you're going to do. Be consistent. Showing them that you love them is being there. That's the way they understand it. Go talk to your church leaders or, friends that that appear to be great fathers to you, that have a great relationship with their kids.
Love on your daughters. They will find in you as a father what they are going to be looking for later in a man, in a husband.
Be very careful with your anger, because it doesn't take a lot of anger to wound a child's trust in a father. And so when we pick them up and hold them and give them hugs and receive their butterfly kisses and things, they feel emotionally delighted in by Daddy. My daddy loves me.
As children are constructing their understanding of the world, the dads occupy a very central role in that understanding of the world. And their behavior is so critical to giving the child a positive sense of what a good father is and what good male behavior is.
And my dad was not perfect. He had issues. He struggled with stuff all of his life, and he didn't have a good influence in his life, but essentially my dad broke that chain and raised in me. And now, praise God, I'm raising my kids differently.
The best thing a father can do for his children is love their mother. But for a child to see his father love their mother, something happens in that child receives that centers their life.
Be a man of God first. Love your wife. Show that you love your wife. After God, there's nothing more important than your family.
Do not be afraid. Never parent out of fear. Love your kid the best you can. Don't try to be perfect. And always move forward. Make amends, say you're sorry, but try better the next time, because that's all your kids want.
But your greatest calling in life, the impact you're going to make that is greater than any other impact, is at home as a dad.
I have heard it said that a father can impact hundreds of generations of those who come after him. I still make mistakes, but I believe that now I make less of them because I walk in daily awareness of my words and actions and how they impact my children. I am not now, nor will I ever be the perfect father, but I am doing my best every day to become a better father. On that cold day in February 2009, I took a step on the journey to find forgiveness from my dad. I had to admit that I had a father wound, ask for help, seek counsel, find healing, and most importantly, forgive. Forgiveness is a powerful thing. It freed me from the chains of anger, bitterness, and resentment. It relieved the burden of guilt, shame, and unworthiness that I carried most of my life. I found forgiveness, but what I also received was a second chance to be the man, husband, and dad I was meant to be. It has been the most challenging road I have ever traveled, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I would do it all again. Because what I have learned has helped me change my legacy as a father, made me a better father, and has forever changed my life. My hope is that you too will take that step.